Srimad, His Divine Graces Ki, Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Shri Prabhupada Ki, Nanda Koli Vaishnava Vrinti Ki, BBT Bangachari, Divine Grace Shri Prabhupada Ki, Shri Hojai Ki Krishna State, and the Prabhu Nityananda, this is Edita, so we go back to Vrinti Ki, Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki, oh glorious symbol, oh glorious symbol, oh glorious symbol of all, oh glorious Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are beginning a new chapter, chapter 5 in Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's second canto. It's entitled The Cause of All Causes. Text 1. Naravacha Deva Deva. Do we just chant it straight? It's pretty easy. Okay, Nararuvacha Deva Deva Namastute Deva Deva Namastestu Bhuta Bhavana Parvaja Tadvijanati Jnanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam Nararuvacha Deva Deva Namastestu Bhuta Bhavana Purvaja Tadvijanahi Jnanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam Nararuvacha Deva of all demigods, Deva the demigod, Nama obeisances, Te unto you as, Astu Bhuta Bhavana, the generator of all living beings, Purvaja, the firstborn, Tadvijanahi, please explain that knowledge, Jnanam, which knowledge, Atvatata, transcendental, Darshanam, specifically directs. Translation, Sri Narad Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief among the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the super soul. Purport. The perfection of the parampara system, or the path of disciplic succession, is further confirmed. In the previous chapter, it has been established that Brahmaji, the first-born living entity, received knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord. And the same knowledge was imparted to Narad, the next disciple. Narad asked to receive the knowledge, and Brahmaji imparted it upon being asked. Therefore, asking for transcendental knowledge from the right person and receiving it properly is the regulation of disciplic succession. This process is recommended in Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual master to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries and service. Knowledge received by submissive inquiries and service is more effective than knowledge received in exchange for money. A spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from Brahma and Narad has no demand for dollars and cents. A bona fide student has to satisfy him by sincere service to obtain knowledge of the relation and nature of the individual soul and the super soul. Om Agyana Timarandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Yugame Parimendasya Spalakate Katimahu Swaki Payustudanina Shankashambalambanam. Pardon me. So this is the chapter which is entitled The Cause of All Causes. And the conversation begins with questions from Maharaj Pariksit about the process of creation, and he's asking Sukadev Goswami. So Sukadev, as is explained very elaborately in the purple here by Srila Prabhupada, he's in the parampara succession going right back to Narad, and Narad receiving instructions from Brahmaji, Lord Brahma, the firstborn, and Brahma received the knowledge from the Supreme Lord in the form of Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So that is disciplic succession. And what's really striking is, I just want to reiterate Ramai Maharaj's point yesterday, that the firstborn intelligent living being was Lord Brahma, who was all intelligent, possessed the most intelligence. This is the part of creation, that Lord Brahma, he is the creator, whereas the people who are reinventing the wheel, the scientists who propound the theory of evolution, assert that we've just come from all these little atoms which are put together, and somehow or other we've developed the intelligence, and we're lucky to be here right now because this intelligence has just been an accident. So it's all accidental. But it couldn't be further from the truth. So, because in Bhagavad Gita also states that the universe is created for the benefit of living entities. Pariyam, Tistamanyam, Prakritim Vedi Me Param, Duridam Jagade Dera. So, the universe is created for living entities to enjoy. I just heard Bhakti Vijayapurna Swami give an example about a child runs outdoors. We have a lot of children running outdoors and wanting to enjoy the material world. So where do they go to normally when they run out the door here in the temple? They go to the playground. Right? So in the playground we've created a situation where they can enjoy. And we've got the facilities. And A child doesn't ask where the playground come from, he just sees a swing, right? So he's going to enjoy the swing. So that is the nature of the living entity, that he wants to enjoy the material universe, and it doesn't really consider where it come from. So in that state of consciousness, it's said that there's 8,400,000 different varieties of enjoyment, and that's to do with all the different bodies that we take. All the bodies the living entity can take birth in according to his propensity to how much he wants to enjoy. So in this way, these 8,400,000 bodies, they're created by Lord Brahma. He's the creator, but sometimes he's called the second engineer, because of course the universe is created by Krishna's expansion form of Lord Vishnu, and then Brahma is like the engineer. He puts the material bodies together. So Pariksit Maharaj is asking questions because he wants to know. A little bit closer, a bit louder. Okay. So Pariksit Maharaj, he wants to know about this creation, because there is some bewilderment there. You look at the creation, and then for a spiritualist who knows that he's not this body, it's inconceivable how the same person has manufactured this wonderful creation that we're in, or it's marvelous creation, and at the same time we're of spiritual nature. So that is, where does that come from? And it comes from one source. So how does this work? There's a word ekaha in Sanskrit that means that the one is expanding into everything. So it's rather bewildering. Of course, we have that saying Srila Prabhupada gave us, Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, which is simultaneously one the same and inconceivable at the same time. So that's how it is. The Lord is one, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but his potencies are inconceivable in our small mind. So Sukadev is endeavouring to explain this to Maharaj Pariksit. So it is said here very elaborately that he's cognizant of where he is getting his knowledge from, and is coming in the disciplic line, and it's being passed down from spiritual master to spiritual master. Just like we are hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Prabhupada, in the same manner Sukadev heard it from Srila Vyasadeva, who heard it from other authorities. It goes back to Narad and to Lord Brahma. So to obtain that knowledge, there is a method, and that method is delineated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 10. Tesham satata yukti yam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami puriyogam tam yena atmana supra yena mamupajanti te. That to those who are constantly devoted to me and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. This is Krishna speaking to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. That is the process. Constant devotion, worship, and then comes the knowledge. So the Buddhi Yogam, that's the knowledge. Buddhi Yogam Tam. I give the knowledge, and where does the knowledge go? It goes into the heart. Right? So following this process, Sukadev Goswami, as is said here, first of all glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he places himself in the mood, in a humble mood, to become a receptacle for knowledge. So, of course, humility humility is the essence, that we approach the Lord in a humble state of mind, saying that we know nothing, and we're asking the Lord for, please enlighten us So that is there. Even the chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, oh my dear Lord, please engage me. So we are asking for the Lord's mercy, because the Lord is all knowledgeable. But in the nectar, also in the nectar of devotion, to reciprocate, stated that one of the qualities of Krishna is gratefulness. So Krishna, he is the Supreme Personality, the Supreme Person of God. We always say that a lot, don't we? Supreme Personality of God. But we mean person, right? Real person. So he reciprocates with the devotees when there is that love and devotion. What's that called? Bhakti. So when there's bhakti there, the Lord reciprocates. The example is given that if we have a reciprocal relationship with someone just here in the world, an ordinary person, of course devotees are not ordinary persons, but we just say a person, and we give them some gifts or we bestow a favour upon them, and they appreciate even just some love and affection, some kind words, then there is gratitude and there is reciprocation always. So that's what friendship is all about. It's even said that in Upadeksham, giving in charity to devotees and accepting in charity from devotees. That's one of the processes of making advancement on part of devotional service. So what to speak of Krishna? So when we worship Krishna and please Krishna, then he bestows so much upon us. He is able to give us way more than what we can, because we're limited and he's unlimited. So, but the devotee is very careful what he asks for. He doesn't want to get too caught up in this material world. I was just thinking of the point, I'm straying off the point here, but I was just thinking before I came in that Lord Brahma, he's the engineer and he had to create all these bodies, and he was having difficulty because all those souls that were taking birth were very, very light souls at the beginning of the universe, and he'd give them the potency to go out and procreate. But then people like Narad Muni and Lord Shiva come along and say, well, why do you want to do that? You know, you're in this material world, you're very close to getting out, you're enlightened, don't get tangled up. Get out of it. So then they become sages and then they refuse to procreate. So Lord Brahma was becoming quite frustrated. So anyway, pure unmotivated devotional service. So at least absolute truth. So it's like Sukadeva Goswami explains in the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam that distinguishes reality from illusion and unfolds the mysteries of the Supreme. So Sukadeva Goswami, because he was so surrendered, he was just amazing setting there. He was just this boy of 16 years old who heard the Bhagavatam in the womb of his mother, given by his father Srila Vyasadeva, and that was his instruction. He couldn't move, he couldn't go anywhere. He was just completely absorbed and attentive to hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was actually the soul travelling in the womb that arrived in the womb of his mother. He was an impersonalist. He was attracted to impersonalist philosophy, and he wanted to stay in the womb because he thought, what's the point of becoming entangled with the three modes of material nature? I'll stay in the womb. How long did he stay in the womb for? 16 years, right. So then Srila Vyasadeva began to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam to his wife, and Sukadeva was in the womb, and obviously he was able to understand and relish the Srimad Bhagavatam. As soon as Vyasadeva finished reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, he took birth and just walked away. So, my son, where are you going? I love one of the stories that I remember right from the first couple of months I joined, was that he walks away and he's walking down the path into the forest, and there were some girls that were bathing in a pond, and they had very few clothes on. They were just bathing there. They weren't expecting anybody to come past, and Sukadeva
When past, they didn't care because they saw that he was just completely spiritualized. So for them it didn't matter. And then Vyasadeva chasing after Sukadeva, and as soon as they saw him, they put their clothes on. They were bashful. So, and then he was walking through all different towns and villages, and little kids, little children would see this naked boy walking past, and they would jeer him and throw stones at him, follow him, make fun of him. So he was walking through the forest, one forest there, which happened to be where he was going. He was being directed by Krishna, because Krishna directs the wanderings of all living entities within the heart. And then he come across the forest clearing, and there was all these sages there waiting for him. And all the little kids, they just ran away. Oh my God, what's going on? So then they invited him to take, they recognized his qualities. What is it? Physiognomy. They could tell that his qualities were godly, and he was the person that they were waiting for, because they really were at odds what to say to Maharaj Parikshit, because he only had 7 days to live. So, and he wanted the source in 7 days. He wanted the absolute truth, because that's all he had time for. He didn't have time for reading all the Vedas or doing all the yoga asanas or whatever. So therefore, Sukadeva Goswami took Vyasana and spoke this beautiful knowledge of Vedanta. So of course the Srimad Bhagavatam has said it's the cream of all Vedic literatures. It's the Bhagavad Purana, and it's described as being illuminating. Why? Because it illuminates us about Krishna. So it's like, it can be compared to when you have a dark house, very, very dark house, and you don't want the light to come in. And it's quite amazing when you have darkness, particularly here in Mawulamba, that you get a lot of cobwebs, isn't it? Wherever there's darkness and dampness, you just sort of look and all these cobwebs appear. And it's a sort of like this is a sign of the material world, right? The darkness, the cobwebs of the mind. You pull the curtains open, the light comes streaming in, and that's Krishna. He's the light. What's that saying on the back of the Godhead magazine? Godhead is light, in essence is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there is no darkness. So, and it anupasyanti. So those who can't see Krishna because of the darkness, they don't know the truth. So what can they see? So Srila Prabhupada in the 4th canto talks about this. He said that the conditioned souls, they try to understand the distinctions between spirit and matter, but they have their difficulties, fraught with difficulties. Just he describes the Mayavadis. Now what a Mayavadi is? Personally. So there's two sorts of Mayavadis. There's the Buddhist. So the Buddhist, he understands that there is pain and suffering in this material world. So to mitigate, to actually get happiness, you get rid of the pain and suffering. Neti, not this, not that, not that. So therefore you go through this process of denial, where ultimately you reach this stage where you have no desires, and you get to nirvana. Annihilation. It's called nihilism. You annihilate everything because you have no knowledge. There's no knowledge of the soul there. So annihilate the body. That's the philosophy of the Buddhists. So the denial of the existence of the soul. So this is Prabhupada and the Acharyas described this as a hellish philosophy. Then the other sort of Mayavadi is the impersonalist coming, or the Sankara school, the Mayavadi coming from the Shankara, who incarnation Lord Shiva. And they recognize the fact that there is a soul, right? There is a soul with the body, but they don't see Paramatma. So therefore they equate the soul within the body as being Supreme Lord, personality, Godhead. So when they see incarnations and the demigods and that, they say, oh, they're just come from the mode of goodness to enlighten us so we can actually emulate them and then go back to the Supreme Brahman, one with the lot, one with the Brahman. Nothing. We just vibrate in the whole Brahman. So, of course, I'm not knowing it, I'm God, you're God, that philosophy of not knowing Paramatma is very limited, because if I'm God, but I can't feel what you're feeling or what you're thinking or what you're doing, or I have no knowledge, right? But the Supreme Lord, this Paramatma, is sitting there in the heart of all living entities. He knows all living entities, every single living entity. This is the potency, the Achintyabheda potency of the Supreme Lord. So that is Vaishnava philosophy, understanding that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Supreme Lord, and he's different from us, the Paramatma, from the Atma. Therefore, Narad is asking Brahma, Brahma's called Bhutabhavana in the sloka, that he is the creator of all living entities, and he also ensures their physical and spiritual well-being. So Narad's asking Brahmaji for the truth about the material world. And because Brahma knows the truth, because it's connected with the self and spirituality. So Lord Brahma knows that without the super soul there is no action. Even though he creates so many bodies, still it takes the super soul to impregnate these bodies. Sambandha Jnana is connection between Sambandha Jnana. It's called the connection between the the matter, spirit, and the self. So there is a story further down the line. I've got a couple of minutes left that I really love to tell you. It's from the 4th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in connection to this, and it explains this a lot more, explains this very, very clearly, and it's in the form of a story, because a little while after Lord Narad Muni, Naradji got instruction from Lord Brahma, he was the spiritual master, so he instructed a lot of great souls. He instructed Prahlad Maharaj, and in this particular case we're talking about King Prachibhanahi, who's the grandson of Maharaj Prithu, who's Shaktavesh Avatar, empowered incarnation of Krishna. So this King Prachibhanahi, grandson of Maharaj Prithu, he was the king of the world, and he was an exalted personality because he was the grandson, and he performed a lot of austerities, and then they went off and they performed so many wonderful austerities. They were beautiful sons. But in the meantime, King Prachibhanahi, he became enamored by the material energy. He had the most beautiful wife. It's said that when he was married to his lovely lady whose name was Satadruti, that not only were demigods completely jealous, that just the sound of her ankle bells drove all the living entities crazy, all the souls from all the different planets. So she was very, very attractive. So he became enamored, and he started performing sacrifices, and different sacrifices for the benefit of gaining wealth and posterity. And it was a little bit of a concern to Narad Muni, because he's a great soul and a great lineage. So Narad came to see him one day just to give him some advice. But being a king, you can't say, "Hey, my dear Majesty, you're in Maya." You don't really say that to a king, or sometimes a king won't take to it very kindly. So Narad's the most diplomatic of all people. Sometimes his diplomacy is way beyond us, our understanding, but in this particular case he said, "Let me tell you a story." It's the story about a King Puranjana. So there's two parts of this story. I'm going to talk about the second part, but I'll just sort of give a little bit of a background on the first part, that King Puranjana, allegorical story, right? So it's a parallel to King Prachibani here, but he's putting away in a sort of sphere where this is a story, follow the story. So King Prachibani, he was a king without a kingdom, and then he found a city, beautiful city, and a princess, and the city had 9 gates, and he went inside the city, and he was able to enjoy so much within the city, everything was there. So the 9 gates, of course, were compared to all the different senses, like the 2 holes in the nose, 2 eyes, 2 ears, the mouth, the anus and the genitals, right? So that were the 9 gates of the city. So at different point in time, he'd go out through these gates and enjoy what was the pleasures there that was past these gates. So the story goes on that in the end, all these enemies started to attack all these gates. And enemies represented old age, disease, old age and disease. And as he was getting old, he was restricted to his defending his body, defending the city from all the attack of all the different living entities. Eventually, the attackers overcame him, that's old age and disease, bound him up and took him away. So that's representing mrityu, death, where the living entity who tries to enjoy the material world is all bound up by ropes and taken to the court of Yamaraj, who's going to determine his next body. So a very nice story. I'll just talk about briefly, because we go into the second half that it was deemed by his karma that he'd take birth as a beautiful princess because he was overly attached to his queen. So we take up the story there that he was born in the same place where he was king, in the same city. But at that point in time, the king was Vidarbha, and he now became a she, and she was a princess by Darby. So, right? So she's in the palace there, and she's said beautiful dark eyes, and Srila Prabhupada explains that dark eyes means that you're attracted to Krishna, because Krishna has got the blackish complexion. So she was looking for a suitable husband who just happened to come along, and he was another very powerful prince, and he became king, and his name was Maladvaya, powerful king. Right, so here we have the same palace that Puranjana was in. Now she's the queen, and her husband, worshipful husband, is King Maladvaya. And he's a very powerful king, very religious king. And to them he had 1 daughter and 7 sons. So 7 sons is very significant here in this allegorical story, because it describes the 7 processes of devotional service. Okay, Shravanam, Kirtanam. So, didn't describe the other 2. It's usually we know 9 processes of devotional service. So what were the other 2 that weren't included? The last 2. Friendship and Atmanived, surrendering everything to Krishna. Because Srila Prabhupada explains that there is a split. There is Vaidhi Bhakti and Raga, Vaidhi Marga and Raga Marga. Vaidhi means the process of devotional services which we all emulate to actually find our path of our spirituality. Shravanam, Kirtanam, hearing and chanting and remembering. They're the main 3. They're the first 3, right? But then at the end, when we develop some spontaneous attraction for the Lord, then we develop that Raga Marga, which is friendship, befriending the Lord and surrendering everything to the Lord. So he had thousands of sons protecting the world. The story goes on. Strong chakras protecting the kingdom. And in one of the verses called Bhakshate, so Srila Prabhupada gives a very, very important point in the purport, that he said that the devotees following the principles of devotional service will give protection also, just like these strong sons that said they protected the world for one kalpa, one lifetime of Lord King Indra. So similarly, the devotees give protection, and who do they protect from? The so-called religious principles, swamis, yogis, karmis and jnanis, who can't show the right way to become elevated on the spiritual platform. So this is the Vaishnava, that we protect this from the bogus philosophy, nirvisesa shunyavadi. And in the purport here, if you remember, there's a very nice sort of point that spiritual master in line of disciplic succession has no demand for dollars and cents. Right? So this is where you get the dollars and cents, all the karmis, yogis, jnanis. Usually there's that involved, there's some material benefit, but the devotee, there's no material benefit, there's only just pure spiritual knowledge. Okay, so because this king, we'll continue on with the story. So we have Vaidarbi who's serving King Vaidarva, Malavaj, Vaidarbi, daughter of Vaidarva, wife of Malavaj, serving very nicely, and he went to the forest. Goes to the forest because he's got thousands of sons. He renounces his kingdom, which good king does in those days. He sort of knows that the citizens are being nicely looked after. So it said that just as the moonshine follows the moon at night, the wife followed the husband. And then they're in the forest, and then the king sat in one spot, and it's described that they ate bulbs, seeds, leaves, flowers, roots, fruits and grasses, and drank water. Sort of reminds me of someone that, hey what? Sounds nice. So, performed severe austerities and became very skinny. But by performance of this austerities, his mind became equal to the dualities. So what are the dualities of nature? Heat and cold, happiness and distress. It says wind and rain, hunger and thirst, pleasant and the unpleasant. And so he conquered all these relative contradictions, and he fixed his mind on Krishna. So in this way, he meditated, he was immovable from his meditation. He meditated 100 celestial years. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport here, a celestial year, that one day of the demigods is like 6 months of our time. So 100 celestial years is like about 36,000 years. I just thought that's a poignant point because some devotees who sort of think, well, I won't make it back to God in this lifetime, maybe I'll make it to the heavenly planets. Well, you might come to the lower sphere of the heavenly planets where you can really enjoy for 36,000 years. But then when you come back, there's still 380,000 years of Kali Yuga left, so good luck, you know. Devotees are well gone by then. It's a real tough struggle. So better fix your mind on the Supreme and aim for the top and not have a diversion. So we continue on with the story because it becomes very pertinent here. I'll just quote a sloka, text 41 and 42. Thanks for paying attention. In this way, King Malavaj attained perfect knowledge because his pure state was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So once again, by meditating on Krishna, Krishna gives you instruction within the heart. By means of such transcendental vision, he could understand all angles of vision. King could observe the supersoul was sitting by his side, and that he, as the individual soul, was sitting by the side of the supersoul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interest. Thus, he ceased from such activities. So Srila Prabhupada explains that is spiritual life. When one is engaged completely in devotional service, you can no longer tell what's material, what's spiritual, because everything becomes spiritualized in the service of Krishna. So that state of mind you reach. So his beautiful wife, who with the beautiful black eyes, now her hair's becoming tangled. She's constantly serving her husband by massaging his feet, and after a certain period of time she's massaging the feet and she finds that the feet grow cold, that the husband has departed, he's left his body. So then there's the great anxiety sets in. She's in the forest all by herself, and all of a sudden she breaks down. She begins to lament loudly, "My dear king, you've gone now. Who's going to protect the world? Who's going to protect me in this forest?" She's shedding a lot of tears, crying loudly, and a Brahmana comes on the scene, and friendly Brahman, and he asks her, "Who are you? Whose wife and daughter are you really? Who's that body lying there? Don't you recognize me? I'm your eternal friend. Remember in the past that you consulted me? In the past you were an intimate friend of mine." He's saying this to the lady. "Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position of enjoyment in this material world." So then he gives the example. He said we were like with two swans swimming in Lake Manasarovar, and although we're swimming together, we're far, far from home. Not seeing me because you became more and more materialistic. You have travelled in different forms throughout the material world. So because you have forgotten spiritual life, you're placed in various miserable conditions. So this is a précis of this page. It's a lovely, lovely story. So you're in this miserable condition. You're not the daughter of Vidarbha, nor is this man here your husband, nor are you King Puranjana. You've been captivated in the city of 9 gates. So that gave the example of 9 gates. So this is all because the body it's been created by this illusory energy. This illusory energy is my potency, and actually both of us, you and I, are pure spiritual identities. So in this way, both swans live together in the heart. When one swan is instructed by the other, he is situated in his constitutional position, and then he can attain his position from that instruction by the swan in original Krishna consciousness, which was lost because of so much material attraction. And so that was the story that Naramuni told King Puranjana. That's pretty relevant to the questions that Sukadeva Goswami is asking. So that's a beautiful story, as I narrated. Oh, does anybody want to make a comment? Have any questions or anything like that? Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.